Sure, it's like yesterday. Yeah, it's don't worry, it's actually doing something this time instead of yesterday. There we go. All right, we should be live now.
Great, thanks.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Hornady, and on behalf of the Nebraska Arts Council, I'd like to welcome you to our grant panel meeting. We have convened to review applications in the Arts Project grant category. Decisions made by this panel will determine the funding for all applications. They will be reviewed by the NAC Council at our next meeting on June 6th. I'll have each panelist introduce themselves. For those who are listening in, we'll share our name, where we're from, and our organization. I'll start. I'm Ellen Hornady from Grand Island, Nebraska, and I serve on the Nebraska Arts Council. Drew, I'll have you go next.
I'm Drew Duncan, live in Lincoln, and I work at Nebraska Appleseed.
Thank you. Laura.
I'm Laura Damath. I live in Lincoln, and I'm recently retired from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, where I was the fellowships advisor, and I was also in the honors program.
Thank you. Crystal.
Hi, Crystal Dunning, based in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I am with the Nebraska Arts Council as well.
Thank you. Rod.
We just lost Rod.
Lost Rod.
Sam, if you would keep an eye out for him.
Okay, while we're waiting for him, Brian, would you mind? We have Brian auditing with us today, but if you could introduce yourself as well.
Yes, I'm Brian Botsford. I'm an Arts Council board member and also a teacher. And this is my first panel, so I am auditing today.
Thank you, Brian. And while we're waiting for Rod to get back with us, I'll have Mike go ahead and make some comments.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you all the applicants for tuning in with us today. There were 42 applications this spring, which is wonderful news that folks are out there putting together projects again and inviting the public in to enjoy public art. So thank you all for that. 42 applications means that there's an awful lot of need out there as well. So our dollars will be stretched a little thin this year, and that is a good thing. But I wish you all luck in front of this stellar panel. We have some very good people here to look over your applications and give their opinions. And I thank you, Ellen. This is the third panel that Ellen is overseeing, and that deserves some combat pay. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the day.
Thanks, Mike. Rachel, would you like to explain the panel process to anyone listening in today?
Absolutely. So for those of you listening in, welcome. Thank you for listening in. I think this is a wonderful way to be able to learn about the panel process and to write better applications year after year. So this is one of the good things that came out of the pandemic, and being able to do these online so that anyone can listen in. If you have not already, please take a moment to register. If you're watching the live stream, there should be a link under wherever you're watching it. That way we know who has sat in on those reviews. Just a reminder to our panelists that even though you can't see or hear the audience, they can see and hear you. Of course, unless you stop your video or mute your mic. We will look to take a break every hour for approximately 5 minutes or so. But if the panelists need to step away, answer the door, let the dog out, that type of thing, just let myself or someone else on the panel know. And when we do take that break, we'll let everyone know when we plan to come back. So for those of you listening in, you know when we're going to start back up again. So now a few details about the panel process. The panelists have received and have read all of the applications in advance. Each application has been assigned a primary and a secondary reviewer. Applications will be discussed and then individually scored by each panelist according to the published criteria for the category, which is the rubric that was attached to the application. The panelist scores at the end will then be averaged, and the applications will be ranked according to that average score, highest to lowest. Panelists will then determine which of the applications merit funding based upon those scores. A mathematical formula will later be applied to determine the grant award amount for approved applications. Award calculations will be based on the average score for each application and the available funds in the category. Therefore, the higher ranking applications will receive a greater percentage of their request. Finally, NAC staff are here to assist with the panel process. We remain neutral so as not to influence the panel process. We do encourage applicants that if they have questions beforehand, we love to help you beforehand before you hit that submit button. But as such, we do not engage in the panel discussion unless we need to add some clarification about a grant or the actual procedures when it's appropriate. Just a final note, the applications will be reviewed in alphabetical order, and a copy of those applications was provided to the applicants. And that is it for me. Mike, would you like to say anything?
Just add one other thing, and that is that it is always important that our constituents take a moment or two to thank their public officials, to thank them for supporting public art and encourage them to do so, and invite them to come to your project so that they can see firsthand the value of public funding for the arts. The legislative session will end one of these days, and they'll all be looking for some diversion. So invite them to come to your project and good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so see, we have you back, Rod. Do you want to introduce yourself to people that might be listening in today?
Sure, and sorry about that. I'm Rod Vester, Director of Contemporary Music at Shenandoah Conservatory.
Thank you. Okay, so we will get started. And so the process will be, we'll have, Rachel will provide a brief synopsis of each application, and then I will call upon panelists one by one for your comments, starting with the primary reviewer, and then the secondary reviewer, and then the remaining reviewers one at a time. And then once all four of you are finished, then I'll give an opportunity for any further discussion that might have come up. And Brian, if you want to add any comments at that point, you're more than welcome to. And then I'll give you a few brief moments if you need to make any adjustments to your scores. And then if you could all just give me a manual thumbs up or your reaction on the screen to let me know we're ready to move on to the next applicant. And we will go from there. Okay. So Rachel, we'll start off with the first one.
Wonderful. So our first applicant is the Albion Area Arts Council. And this grant is to help fund the artists who perform during the Albion Area Arts Council Summer Concert Series, which will be held at a newly built outdoor community entertainment venue in the center of downtown Albion, Nebraska. The 2023 series consists of 5 concerts, which will be performed in July. They estimate 1,500 people from the Boone County and broader area are expected to attend the concerts.
Okay, thank you. And Drew will kick us off on our first applicant.
Yes, and I apologize. For some reason, my grant portal is giving me a circle of death and I can't get into it.
Same.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, is if everybody's having that problem. Hold on 1 second and let me see what I can do.
I love that we call it the circle of death.
I was trying to get prepared and get into it and it wouldn't let me do anything. So I was like, I don't have this memorized.
So if everybody would do me a favor and go ahead and log off.
out of the grant program.
Yeah, log, sorry,
entirely?
not out of Zoom. Sorry, log off of the grant program.
It's not even really letting me do that.
It won't even let you do that.
I just have circle of death.
Oh, dear Lord. All right.
Hey, but Zoom works today.
Zoom works fine. All right, hold tight.
Would a Control-Alt-Delete let you close that out possibly?
I mean, I can just close out of the window. I guess I can. Try to just open it up all new. But even that's just.
That's right. We needed to give Jennifer a little stress this morning.
It was working like 10 minutes ago when I was in there.
I was gonna say, I think I had mine pulled up super early this morning, so I was like, what's the problem?
Yeah, I even refreshed and everything. So
Yeah, Rachel, as soon as you go to refresh, it will give you the spin of death.
Oh.
So, all right, I will be on the phone with them, so I am gonna mute.
Well, if anyone needs to step away, get a fresh cup of coffee, you know, that type of thing. That's cool.
I want to go where Drew is.
Right.
That picture.
Sam, if you wanted to pop that screen up that says we'll be back, that'd be great.
I'm leaving this webinar or leaving this Zoom for just a second. I will be back on though.
Sam, are you still there? So I just wanted to give an update to those of you that are listening on the live stream. We're having an issue with the grant system. And so that's why we're taking a little bit longer break and waiting for that to come back up.
Okay, go ahead and log on, please.
All right, we should be, fingers crossed, we should be good to go.
Is everybody able to get logged in okay? Thanks, Rod. Thanks, Crystal. Drew. Can we take the, yeah, there we go. Thank you. Okay.
Laura, are you able to get into? Good, great.
Perfect.
Well, thank you all for your patience. Technology can be your friend. It can also bite you in the butt. So hopefully we've had our bite for today and we'll be able to get through the rest of them. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so Drew, we'll go back to you to kick us off with the Albion Area Arts Council.
Great, thank you. Looking through the artistic quality, I like how the artists of all 5 concerts have some musical variety to each other, and that the artists are connected to Nebraska somehow, not necessarily like local musicians, but have some sort of Nebraska roots. I think that's a really cool thing. A nice mix of all of that and also different diversity in what parts of Nebraska, as Nebraska's landscape is very diverse. I like how they communicate the communication on intent of artist choices and the diversity of the series. I like their narration of how they explained that. Looking at the planning and evaluation, I feel like they had clear and descriptive goals. I like how the evaluation is intentionally capturing comparison in concert models to make a better informed decision for future years of the concert series. I think they could use more explanation on how attendance and diversity demographics will be captured from the series. I liked how the different tactics are mentioned and how to gain attendee feedback at the events. I thought that was good information. I like that there is an effort to analyze community and economic impact of the event. Sharing a more specific plan could help ensure that this great evaluation idea can work and be tracked. I would recommend analysis of the evaluation process this year in their efforts to keep improving of it. So I hope that they take an opportunity to really evaluate how that works, because I think that that's really great data for future and for expanding grant proposals. So they should really keep moving with that. A good mix of event coordination and marketing in the timeline document. I love how the timeline also includes funding and grant making within their timeline. Sometimes it's a part that's not remembered in the logistics of a timeline, so I appreciate that. But the Boone County Foundation Fund grant is not in their timeline, but something that was mentioned in their budget. I would just suggest adding space in the timeline, even for research of more funding and grant opportunities, is something that's good to put in the timeline to make sure that that space is given. Looking specifically at the budget, which is one of my favorite parts of looking through things. I think there's opportunity for more details in the budget. For example, like the travel miles, like who and what is that actually for? One could assume it's travel for the artist's fee, or it's travel for the artist, but many times artist travel is included in the fee. So it's just unclear kind of where that's for. The stage rental is listed as one fee. I think that explanation box could help, or that should be broken down to explain whether that's one flat fee for all concerts or is there a fee per concert. And then a little kind of disturbing part, I know that the budget got updated, but in the first round, the stage rental fee was $500. And after the adjustments, now the stage rental fee is $2,000, which is a rather large increase. So again, being able to break down if that's a stage fee per concert or if that's all encompassing, or why now that has increased by 1,500. That's information that some clarity needs to be around, and the change in that just kind of lowered just a little bit of the integrity of the grant and the budget for me. I'm curious about other project expenses like electricity, or if that's included within the stage rental. Is there portable restrooms or city registration fees for street closing, those kinds of things? There wasn't those details kind of in there or explained anywhere. And I'm mainly concerned that there's no mention in the budget of event insurance or any of mention of that in the planning documents either for an event like this. So I don't know if that's included in other parts or not, but that's always a good thing to have in grant proposals to show the planning parts of these kinds of things. One idea that I just thought I'd share, looking through their stuff, I think they have some opportunity for more earned income with either, they already have Arts Council swag, it looks like, or they have the food trucks, maybe percentage can go back. I think there's some more fundraising opportunities for them looking through their budget. And then looking at the outreach and engagement, I really enjoy seeing the social media interaction and community excitement that they shared in the narrative of the grant. Love the promotional tactic of mailing to council members with educational materials about the event to really empower other people within the community to be promoters of the event. I thought that was really an innovative way of doing marketing and kind of looking at the trendsetters within their community to also be promoters. I thought it was a well thought out and robust promotional plan, good info on the overall inclusion and accessible nature of the event, good community outreach and crossover opportunities, and also enjoyed the letters of recommendation.
Thank you, Drew. Up next, Crystal, anything to add?
Yeah, Drew, I think you caught a lot of the things that I had flagged as well. Overall, thought the artistic quality portion of the application was pretty thorough and pretty well executed there. When we got to planning and evaluations, I had similar questions about how the demographics would be captured, but also agreed that particularly the portion where they're going to work with local businesses to assess the economic impact. I thought that was really interesting and a really neat idea. The budget, I had similar concerns, particularly about the mileage and seeing would have liked to see things broken down a little bit more so I could understand that. And then overall outreach, I agree. It was a robust plan. Only thing about the outreach and engagement, I would say, is would like to dive in a little bit more. They mention various ethnic and cultural groups at some point, but not really. It kind of tails off, so not quite sure how they're planning to incorporate that. But overall, thought it was a strong proposal.
All right, thank you, Crystal. Rod, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I saw the explanation or the observation about the Latino growth of the Latino community and the inclusion of the Hanara. ensemble. So I thought that was really intentional. So I really appreciated that. But other than that, nothing more to add than what Drew and Laura had said.
Okay, thanks, Rod. Laura, anything to add?
Not really, other than I like their outreach to the senior community. I thought that was, a very positive. I mean, that's recognizing their demographics, which is in the process of changing, but also there's a stable community that needs some attention as well. So I liked that.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this applicant? If not, I'll give you a few moments. If you need to make any adjustments to your scoring when you're ready to move on, give me a thumbs up, please. I might have missed it. Rod and Laura, are you guys both ready to move on? Okay, thank you. Rachel, next one.
Our next applicant is Capital Jazz Society. The Capital Jazz Society is a nonprofit organization that presents a series of high-quality jazz events on Monday evenings throughout the year at the Storm Cellar in Lincoln. They're currently preparing for their July through December events of 2023.
All right, thank you. Rod, we'll have you kick off this one.
Sure. For artistic quality, I thought the performance videos really displayed professional level playing, so no concerns there, really strong. The planning and evaluation, it seemed to me very insular, meaning that the evaluation processes were mainly speaking with participants and students. What I would suggest, it might prove helpful just to have, other opportunities to engage with attendees, whether that's through a questionnaire, a survey, or, something of that sort, with specific questions, aligned with the project outcome goals. So just kind of broadening the evaluation process. Some of the continuing in the evaluation, some of the success was based on audience attendance. But I would like to know more about what is a sold out crowd, right? So is that 50% capacity, is that 100% capacity? Because that term can mean something different. So just if success is based off of being a sold out crowd, what is that percentage? Then the budget, the only question I had about the budget was there was an expense for miscellaneous within the production. I think it was $500, and so just kind of curiosity, like, what is that? I understand that things happen with production, but just kind of some explanation about what the organization is forecasting would be that money would be used for would be helpful. The outreach, there was a statement about striving to include all community members in the program, students, adults, senior citizens, et cetera, but there is no details on how that's being done. So just some examples of, how you are, striving or, plan to accomplish this, kind of including all community members would be great. Letters of support, I thought were really strong. I think the first letter spoke to, how the organization is still kind of centering jazz within music in general, as other music is growing, but this organization is really keeping it centered. And then I really appreciated the second letter, which I guess from a former student who is also a teacher now. So just to kind of see the pathway that the organization is creating, I think is really great. So having students, of course, able to sit in with the organization, with the ensemble, play with the ensemble, interact, and then those students sometimes go on to become teachers and they come back to participate and then they send students. I think that's just a great way to have this kind of pathway for students. But other than that, I think it was a strong application.
Thank you. Okay, Drew, anything to add to that?
Yeah, mainly in like the planning and evaluation. Just kind of to elaborate on the project evaluation process. I mean, they stated in there how it's an established event that's been happening. So I feel like there's an opportunity to, in the narrative, to state what has worked in their evaluation process versus just kind of talking more vaguely about it. And I do think that there could be more details and description of especially like who is doing what parts within the timeline to give solid evidence of how that's being broken down and divvied out. Within the budget, there was a couple things just, there's requests within the budget of how things should be broken down, simple things like a blanket amount for big band musicians opposed to breaking that down to how many per event week or something like that. It's just asked for it to be presented that way. And it's just good to have better breakdown in that. I think there could also be breakdown within marketing and the miscellaneous expenses as stated before. One question that I had in there, there's a line item for office rental, and I would assume that might be part of for Arts Incorporated, which is managing it, and wonder if that should be more incorporated within the management fee, as they're that's what the management fee is also for. So curious on what that is. It's just unclear, as renting an office doesn't necessarily seem needed for live jazz performance, but I don't know. I mean, who knows? And then also, I feel like their foundation support line item could definitely be broken down more on how that is. And then also, there's a line item in the revenue about individual donations received. It would be good somewhere in the narrative or even in the explanation area to mention if these are individual donations received prior to or during the event. If it's helping fund it, I don't know if that's revenue that's coming in as part of, these concerts. It's just unclear. And those questions kind of came to me. And then again, just with some of the outreach stuff, I think it would be great to see a little bit more effort to broaden the community partnership. There's a lot of narrative of community partnership within other organizations, but they're all insular organizations of Arts Incorporated. So I'm wondering what they're doing outside of that bubble, as well as their target audience. Just to elaborate more on what Rod said, I think it is very insular and there isn't a lot of narrative on how they're going beyond the existing audience that they already have. A lot of the narrative is just how they interact with people already in the know of them. And I don't see a lot of narrative on engaging their targeted audience that may not be familiar of who they are. There's just not anything mentioned about that.
Okay, thank you. Laura, do you have anything additional to add?
Oh, there we go. Only, I think, repeating just a little bit of what they said is that, in fact, the evaluation could be more detailed, so that in addition to the head counting and talking to people about their experiences, really digging down and visiting with the students more about what their experiences are, so that there's a real link up. It's there, but I'd like more specifics on the connection between the opportunity for these students to perform and what their experiences have been, what they've learned from it. And that way, that backs up that letter that Tommy Kruger submitted. So yeah, just it's an opportunity to do more with the evaluation that they haven't done.
Thank you. And Crystal, anything to add?
No, nothing that has not already been stated.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this application? Okay, then give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on. Okay, Rachel.
Our next applicant is the Grand Island Music Series. And the Grand Island Music Series is a new concert series taking place at Stir Museum and College Park in Grand Island. There will be 3 outdoor concerts at the Stir Museum in July through September of 2023, and 3 indoor concerts at College Park from October through December of 2023.
Okay, and Drew will kick us off.
Okay. I'm going to spout out my stuff. And then if I'm not understanding things correctly and other people are understanding it better, I'm excited to hear that. So between the brief summary, use of the NAC funds, and project name, it seems as if the grant is for 6 concerts that run between July 2023 through December 2023, some of which, from my understanding, are part of the 22-23 season and other parts are of the 23-24 season. The grant narrative is very confusing in the many different ways they explain the breakdown of concert months and venues, and it does not start off feeling very organized, or at least being able to be explained in an easily understandable way. So that's like my first big thing. There's no narrative of artistic quality for these 6 concerts, which I understand they are saying the artists have not been chosen, but in the documents that they had even given of the 22-23 season, there are 2 concerts in that are part of this funding. And they're listed, but in the project description, there's no mention of a potential there. Oh, and also there's in the project description, there is mention of a potential artist that is planned for the future, but there's still no narrative explaining those planned or potential artists. Again, there's just a lot of lack of clarity. The narrative is very vague and not clear enough in connection of diverse groups in the community. It's very generalized: in the future, we hope. It just doesn't instill solid confidence when looking at it from a funding perspective. Further description in a few concrete options would be better than just like blanket general ideas. The artistic sample work of past oh yeah, for artistic work, I think because the series has kind of been going on, I think they could have used some of what has been done in the past, in this last year, as examples of artistic work, and none of that was in there. And even as all artists are supposedly not chosen, there's no clarity or information that really ensures that quality of artists will be involved. Instead, the narrative is just like very blanket ideas of how groups are chosen. I feel like it just wasn't very descriptive. Looking at planning and evaluation, the goals just didn't seem very detailed to me, and they were very generic. There's no mention of goals for, or like of the audience, just basically of what they're presenting. It'd be great if the planning and evaluation narrative of the grant was focused on the time frame of the grant that is intended, and not just like wide organizational goals and evaluation, just to keep that in line. As the series started in September of 2022, it would have been good to have some narrative on what evaluation has or has not worked in the past to help guide better evaluation for the time period of this proposed grant cycle. And the timeline is very generic and does not identify key people or specific collaborators or their roles within the project. Looking now at the budget, again, if I'm understanding the time frame of the grant, with 2 of the 6 concerts as already being part of the 22-23 season, those artistic fees should be set and would be able to be pinpointed within the budget, opposed to approximate amounts. There's no explanation of agreement in using the indoor outdoor spaces for the series, and if there's any facility rental or if facilities are covered within some of the costs that are in there. The administration budget item is not clear. That should really be broken down more as far as like what is insurance, what's management fees, and there's no indication of like who is doing the management. That is the charging fee for management is 20% of the full budget. And based on the administrative bios, are we assuming that that's to Arts Incorporated and Dean, who's listed as the executive director of the Grand Island Music Series, or is it going to Arts Incorporated? There's just a lot of inconsistency and unclear things in the budget that just, again, don't provide a lot of solidifying of what's happening. Advertising is not broken down. The foundational support is very general. I think even when you don't know exactly what the funds are, still in your planning or what you hope to acquire from, it's good to have that breakdown in there to know that you're looking at those various points. Looking at outreach and engagement, again, very, very general language in demographics and programming impact. There's a lot of intends to or plans to. As seen in the materials provided, the concert series started in September of 2022, and the narrative could have used examples of the diverse programming from the previous season to kind of like show more of what's happening. There's generalized language in the promotion section as well. No examples of how it is tailored to reach these audiences. As the series began, a full year ago, I feel more specific examples of promotion that has worked and not just general ideas would instill better confidence in their grant narrative. In underserved community outreach section states that venues are accessible, but there are still like some barriers with having ticket prices. I was really surprised in this section that there was no mention of some of the concerts are free. This is the section to kind of like include that information that wasn't in there. Let's see here. There is narrative in there of the mere scheduling of diverse musical genres will then just appeal to diverse populations, but there's no mention of how to communicate to those communities about the opportunities and the different diverse music options. And then again, in music partnership, it discusses that Arts Incorporated in Lincoln as a contracted partner with the music series, but there's no mention of any Grand Island partnerships like the ones that we are already aware of, like Stir Museum and College Park. It's just not in there, even though it's mentioned in other areas. I feel like that's the place to have it. There's a big lack of other community partnership, according to the grant proposal, that, if you look at the 22-23 season program, there's a whole variety in that documents that they sent of community individuals and organizations that have given time and expertise to the music series, but none of that's mentioned in any of this narrative in this section. You have to kind of like dig for it. Then there's also just a lack of description of outreach engagement. It just states the intended outreach, talking about the programming of the French Connection, but like, what does that teach? Who is the intended audience to gain knowledge from this program? None of that information is gone into details. I almost felt like the letters of support had more and better detail than parts of the grant. I know I've talked a lot about this one, but this was my most challenging one to review. And I just kind of want to do just a blanket statement about the whole thing. It's just, as a grant reviewer, it just kind of like hurts when you see such a good project and you like it so much and such in my opinion, just such a poorly put together grant that does not represent it very well. And so we're here to judge and score the grant. And unfortunately, that's not, that doesn't reflect on the project itself. I don't know. That's my just like little soapbox moment. I just had a tough time with this one.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Laura, do you have anything to add?
Not much, because Drew did a really good job, I think, of laying out some of the confusion, because I was totally confused as to what we were really funding. And a lot of discrepancies, a lot of statements like Carrie Chris, this woman from Paris, who's going to come and presumably perform in December, that she's going to go out to the public schools, but what does that mean? I like Drew, I want more detail. I want the credibility of your application goes up as soon as the detail is there. And without it, we're struggling to try to figure out, what it is that they're actually proposing. So everything Drew said, I'm totally, in line with. One of the things I would say that it's a real missed opportunity to not reach out to the Multicultural Coalition in Grand Island. This is a nonprofit that specifically addresses the new demographic that's coming into the area. That would have been a great partner to begin to talk with them, to advertise through them, to promote the concert series, and then be able to really specifically say, oh, with 62% of our population now Latino, let's do something musically to support that. So again, kind of a lost opportunity. I didn't know who Jim Piper was. And so I think sometimes the letters would be really helpful if the people would introduce themselves, or at least have it on letterhead or something, so that we really understood who was supporting the event. But yeah, I'm 100% with Drew. This was hard for me to evaluate and not give strong support to, even though I think the event itself deserves strong support.
Great, thank you. Crystal, anything to add?
No, that was a really thorough, I think, rundown of the grant itself. I do have a question, just in general. If this feedback on this particular grant, I know people are registering whether or not they're watching, but just curious if this feedback is shared with them, because it seems like we really we think the project itself has merit, but the grant itself is as I forget if Drew or Laura who stated it, but the grant itself isn't necessarily doing it justice.
Yeah, there are minutes being taken for each of the applicants today, and the applicants will receive those minutes. So hopefully they will utilize those the next time they write their grants. All right, thanks, Crystal. Rod, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just one observation about language. When they talked about ethnic music and groups, just an observation, just to kind of be careful with that language, because it presents as if it's like a lump, as if they've lumped kind of all cultural groups and or people of color into like this one thing, right? And sometimes the term ethnic can promote exoticism, which is also problematic. So similar to how they listed, country music, blues, bluegrass, you can list, other forms of music instead of just kind of lumping it all into one. So just an observation there. It's not accusatory, but it's just an observation, just to be mindful of language.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on this applicant? Okay, if not, I'll give you a couple of moments. Let me know with a thumbs up when you're ready to move on to the next one. All right, thank you. Rachel, next.
Our next applicant is the Kimball Concert Association. And this grant will help the Kimball Concert Association team start their 48th year. Grant funds are essential to paying the artists who will be performing. They have 2 fall concerts. In October, they have Empire Trio, and then in November, Jason Lyle Black. These dynamic and energetic acts will engage the growing audience and student body. Concerts are for the patrons and individual ticket holders and are held in the auditorium in Kimball, Nebraska.
Okay, and Laura, you're up first.
Well, first of all, I strongly support the project because we've got an underserved community out in Kimball, Nebraska. And the fact that they've been doing this for 48 years is commendable. I do think that the 2 performing groups have a lot of artistic merit. I mean, they are professionals and they're qualified and talented to be a part of this. I suppose the only thing that I would say is that in watching the YouTube videos of the groups, they did seem a bit similar in some of their approach, so that the Empire Trio was doing the Hollywood soundtracks, songs from Hollywood, and Jason Lyle Black was doing more of a Disney medley with some Victor Borge kind of repartee. But it's a little, to me, it's a little old fashioned. And I think that does appeal to the community that's in Kimball. I mean, it has a high percentage of elderly and senior citizens, which they do want to appeal to. On the other hand, if they're trying to appeal to young families or incoming, they talk a lot about the changing demographics of their community and how they've got a lot of building going on and people coming in and changing, and they want to reach out to those people. I'm not so sure that this particular selection would do that. So that's one concern I had. The group that they, Allied Concerts, who they collaborate with, do have a lot of other options. So that's just one tiny thing. I mean, they're perfectly qualified and wonderful artists. I wish they were a little different from each other, I guess. Goals and evaluation. I think the goals are very precise. They want to sell 200 season tickets. And I think that they are determined to do that. They're thinking of targeting music educators, which is great. And they're also thinking of targeting these new industries that are coming into town, and even temporary workers, and reaching out to real estate agents and things like that to try to drum up a business. Because they've been doing this for a while, I wondered if they had any information which would have been useful to put into the application on how many tickets were sold to this group in previous years. I mean, how successful has this been to, to reach out to real estate agents and other, new families as they come into town. I do believe that the planning was strong, that the individuals were extremely competent. They've been doing this since 2017. The budget seemed accurate to me, reasonable to cover the artist's expenses. I think as always, a little more detail in the budget is welcome. When you just see a line item food, it might be nice to know what we're really talking about there. I mean, we can assume, we can presume what that might be, but it's still would be good to put in. Audience development. I think that these concerts provide a real opportunity for social interaction within the community. I like the community aspect of this. Area restaurants offering discounts, bringing people into town. I think that this is a really wonderful community opportunity. I'm not sure that there's a strong plan in place to really reach out to other communities, but clearly in order to get their ticket sales up, they really must. They say that they have people coming from Fort Collins and Wyoming and stuff, but what kind of outreach are they really doing to other communities in the area besides just their small town. So again, it's kind of insular that way. And I think I would like to have seen more of a description of how they might do some more outreach. But certainly this is an underserved community. It's geographically isolated. And I also like the fact that they partner with the local transit system to try to help patrons get to the events. Again, this is what a small town can do, and I think they really are taking advantage of that in a good way. They say that they encourage their artists to work with the area schools to do daytime clinics and workshops, but it's not written into the contract to do so, I guess. I would really like to see that happen. I would like that to be a real deliberate sort of event, so that, again, they're reaching out and educating people at the same time that they're performing in the area. So I think it would be a critical piece to add in, and that could even be working with senior centers as well. But that outreach component could be there, and it's not quite there. Kind of somewhat stated, but not definitive. Strong letters of support from the mayor and the public schools. They selected exactly who they needed to in order to support the project. So yeah, I think that's it. I strong project, and well worth the time that they put into the application.
Thank you. Drew, anything additional to add?
Yeah, I really liked the energetic narrative of the grant, but I would say there's an opportunity there for it to then tend a little in a chaotic narrative as well. I think there's an opportunity to kind of tighten it up of what sections you're talking about to be in the sections that are laid out within the grant. There was lots of time I had to reference other areas because the area that information I needed was already referenced in somewhere else. So I felt like I was kind of popcorning around to put together the information in the section that it was asking for it to be in. Obviously, there will be overlap in some of that, but there was times where it just seemed a little, I got lost in having to hunt it back down. I think some of the planning and valuation, there was just like little things that I felt like a little more explanation. How do you guarantee that you're counting music teachers in attendance and student? I understand it's a small town, but like, what are the procedures of being able to do that? There was mention of like looking at car tags to ensure something, and that just, there's a lot of question marks around that. And I think there could have been some more details within the planning documents, adding information about sponsorships or foundation support acquisition. There was a lack of that in planning. And then with the budget, I always just like a lot of breakdown. So if there's a lack of breakdown, I feel a certain way about it. Like the concert venue, I'm assuming that's the fee for both, but it should be broken down for the two concerts. Advertising and marketing, while it is one area, there's so many different avenues of that, and breaking down what areas you're investing in versus others is good to know for your grant request. We already talked about food expense, and it's unclear of who that food is actually for. Breakdown of the administration costs, especially in events that people are attending. It's just important to have insurance be its own line item so that you know that it's actually in there or not, what that is, what's the specific people or roles that that administration fee is going towards. And then just a general suggestion, I think, for this series being around for so long and being very community oriented, I feel like some other revenue and fundraising streams is a place that could be a big benefit and could use some attention, just with the NAC grant being close to 45% of their full budget. I just feel like there's opportunity there for them to invite the community to support it even more. I think more quantitative geographic data would be very helpful, and how that data can help inform them to make diverse programming choices. I feel like there was a lack of connection between that. And then, looking at promotion, I'm just curious. Questions that come to mind is, how does Kimball get their news, TV, radio, newsletter, and why isn't that part of any of the promotional strategy in there? Yeah, and then just agreeing with the outreach. When there's language of "we hope to" and general hopes and that kind of stuff, it doesn't do anything for me. So more specifics on intent is helpful. So that's what I have. Sorry.
Thank you. I did want to make a comment. You were talking about looking at car tags. I'm assuming that they're looking at license plates, and for grant writers, your reviewers aren't always from Nebraska. So they wouldn't know that in Nebraska, each license plate has a separate number depending on what county you're from. So if they're using that to determine where people are coming from, that are attending from different counties, that's what that means. But when you're writing a grant, you need to make sure that that's clear what that is. So thank you. Rod, anything to add?
Well, just to echo what's already been said, I really just a bravo to the working with the local transit to get people there, because I think so many times, we give free tickets, which is one part of access, but then how do people get there, right? So it's just a deeper level of understanding access. So I really appreciate that. Just with the project goals, I mean, just more things that are measurable, so how many temporary workers, how many new citizens, and then how, will the organization keep growing and moving forward. And just lastly, for me, the project evaluation kind of read as more possibilities versus actualities. And I think it's just simple word like "we can" versus "we will." So, I just kept seeing well, are they actually going to do this, or are they just suggesting that we could do this, but we're not going to do this? So just some kind of more, preciseness around the evaluation.
Thank you. And Crystal, anything to add?
No, I will echo the transportation aspect, because I really thought that was creative, but also a really, really great way to address an issue that often isn't addressed in putting together these events.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this applicant? Okay, give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, and is everyone okay with doing one more before we take a break? Since we got a little bit of a late start. Okay, Rachel, let's do one more.
Great. And if anyone has issues with the grant system, mine spun for a while. So if you have issues, hang in there. And yeah, mine eventually did come up. I just had to give it a bit. So the Lincoln Community Foundation is our next applicant. The Lincoln Community Foundation Garden Performance Series will be held on Wednesdays from May till September in 2023. These free public concerts are held from noon to 1 in an outdoor pavilion at the Foundation Garden. They're requesting an arts project grant to help support these free weekly concerts in downtown Lincoln.
Okay, thank you. Up first, Rod.
Yeah, artistic quality, I would just say for the performance video submission, just a suggestion maybe to get in some closer video, as well as possibly some better audio can just help determine kind of the artistic quality, it was a little difficult to kind of make that out. As far as merit, I mean, based on the letters of support, I mean, the event seems pretty valuable to audience members. One of the letters talked about how people are traveling from afar to attend this. So that kind of speaks to the merit of the artist as well as the event. The planning seemed pretty solid with a good amount of detail, and responsibilities among parties were pretty split evenly. So no issues there. I did have a question about just the amount that's being paid to groups. It's $275 per group. So I don't know what the market value is, where the organization is, but perhaps some benchmarking. It for me, it seems low. So perhaps some benchmarking, with similar event size, scope, and caliber performers can be helpful with that. Because if it was an individual, that's one thing, but if it's saying $275 per group, just seems a little low. But again, I don't know the market value, but maybe just some benchmarking will be helpful. Let's see. I had a question about with outreach and engagement. I had a question about what is meant by quality of audience interaction, because that's kind of one of the things that they're measuring, or something that's being evaluated. So I'm not sure what quality of audience interaction means. And then they talked about the removal of the pre-recorded music. And so I wanted to know if that was a result of the evaluations. And so just kind of, I think it will be helpful to, to show like what has changed or has been modified based on attendance evaluations. So we can clearly see that, you're listening to the audience. So questions just about that. Back to the letters of support. One of them really discussed the diverse audience and how the music was community friendly. And so that really stuck out to me. And then the other one talked about kind of diverse audience, again, that attends these performances. So it seems like what they're trying to accomplish with this diversity with the audience is being accomplished based on these letters of support. But other than that, nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Drew, anything to add?
Yeah, in the artistic quality section, I think there's an opportunity here. The narrative states that the artists haven't been chosen yet, but I feel like information about how many have applied so far, or giving information on like the current status of the time of the grant is good. It's just kind of getting a clear, in-depth picture of what's actually happening, brings us more into the moment and where they are in the process. And I think that's a nice opportunity. One discrepancy I found: the narrative states that the application and close and selection process starts March 1st, but in their planning documents, they have all of that actually stated as starting in early February. So it looks like the documents may not have been updated maybe from previous years, which just kind of leads to questions of maybe what other parts of the timeline may not be accurate or in line with the intended grant cycle. And then there was some confusion in the budget for me. And again, if others understand it, I would love to understand it more myself. The grant seems to be submitted by Lincoln Community Foundation for this series, but the authorized official for the grant is Dean Heist, who runs Arts Incorporated, which is the contracted organization who's managing the series, but doesn't necessarily work for Lincoln Community Foundation. So when looking at the line item of other contractual fees, which is 50% of the budget, it's not clear to me who's that necessarily like for. Is that coming from the Arts Inc. perspective or Lincoln Community Foundation perspective? And if parts of this could be in the administration section or other project expenses, is Lincoln Community Foundation really only paying the performers and Arts Inc., or is there other expenses where that line item should have been broken up into other areas of the budget? It's just a little confusing to me with those two entities and who's actually doing the grant and who it's going for, if that makes sense. And then just for outreach, while there is a lot of diversity in the community of like downtown Lincoln, I think it would be nice to see examples of how they are connecting with the diverse audiences instead of that continuing narrative that we hear sometimes in other places of a variety in musical genre just does not always equal then a diverse audience. And I feel like that gets used a lot. And I feel like it's just an easy way to bypass how you're actually connecting with audiences to bring diverse audiences to bring them in. Just again, having a variety of musical genres does not a diverse audience make.
Okay, thank you. Crystal, anything to add?
Yeah, so I think overall the application was really strong and would just echo a couple of the things that have already been called out. I do have a question about the budget now. So Drew, I appreciate you kind of highlighting that, and would just be curious to know more about how that's broken down. But other than that, I think the rest of the application was pretty strong.
Thank you. And Laura, anything to add?
It's only one thing really, and it's just my personal pet peeve, I guess, but I really wish the letters would be on letterhead. Sometimes they look to me like they've just been like it's an email that's been put into the application. And I just think it's important to, again, to as you formalize and write a formal application that this be more more professional. But other than that, I agree about, I understand how the casual informal music venue can be good for children. But how, what are the other demographic groups that they might be reaching? So.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this application?
Would Rachel be able to clarify, is this grant coming from Lincoln Community Foundation or from Arts Inc.? Is there any clarification that we need to know in looking at that perspective, since the budget kind of makes that question happen?
So officially, the application comes from the Lincoln Community Foundation. I do happen to know that Arts Inc. writes it for them. So and it might be part of the services they provide as that administration is grant writing, but the applicant itself is the Lincoln Community Foundation.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So go ahead and make any scoring adjustments that you need to, and we will take a break. Rachel, what time should we come back?
Let's come back at 10:40.
Okay. Thank you. We will see you then.
Great. Thank you.
All right, do we have everyone back? Okay.
Laura, hang on. Laura Marsh, are you back too?
Yes.
Perfect. She's taking minutes, so I want to make sure we have her.
Definitely. Okay, if we want to change our screen back. Thank you. Okay, Rachel, we'll start with the next one.
So our next applicant is Merrymakers Association, and this grant will help pay for contracted professional musicians to provide live musical entertainment on a monthly basis to senior citizens at 6 Nebraska senior communities for an entire year. The project will occur between July 1st of 2023 and June 30th of 2024, and will provide 72 live performances and achieve approximately 2,250 direct contact hours with participating seniors.
Okay, and Crystal, we'll start with you.
All right. So starting off with artistic quality, I think the artistic merit and the qualification of the artist, I think that was all there and represented. The project description itself, I would have loved to see just a little bit more detail about the program, about the concerts themselves. There's a lot of information in here about it says monthly musical entertainment, but just I would have loved to just them dive in a little bit more there. And then hopping to planning and evaluation. Honestly, the only thing I have to flag here is the budget, and it's more of a question. So to kind of echo Drew, if there's something I'm not understanding, please hop in, let me know. But there's a line item for travel to Columbus and Emerson, $200, and I'm assuming that's for the artist, but I just would like to see that broken down just a little bit more. Is it for all of the artists? What does that look like? And then the flag I have is under administration. It says executive director wage allocation, and I'm not sure what that is, and I'm not sure if that's something that can be funded by this grant. So I guess that's more of a question about what we can and can't fund. But I did have that flag. Other than that, I thought their overall planning process for this type of event, I thought that was pretty well outlined. There are a couple of generic things like analyze results from annual surveys. So would like to see maybe just a little bit more of how that is going to be done. And for community outreach and engagement, I think that this is a really neat program and a needed one. So was really glad to see that this was happening. But would like to see a little bit more information about the community partnerships and how each of these senior facilities are going to interact with them, what their role is. Are there additional things happening behind the scenes that the community partner is handling to make this event even more dynamic for the audience? And marketing would also, I won't say that I would like to have seen more marketing, because I do think some of this is maybe just the nature of the program about, what kind of marketing you need to do. But just kind of had that call out for myself. Other than that, I didn't have any large flags. Thought it was a good program represented well, but biggest flag was that executive director budget line, and then also just would like to see some more details in the outreach and engagement portion.
Thank you. I don't know, Megan or Rachel, did you want to clarify on the budget line item?
Yeah, so in our budgets, if they have a salaried position that spends a portion of their time working on the project, we ask them to put that expense in the administration section. Because we understand that you may have a salaried position that does a lot of things, but they may work on this certain project for so many hours. So that's why we have them, they're allowed to put it in the administrative, but it's not something where they would put, the entire executive director salary in there, because that's not all that they do.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I appreciate the clarification.
Yep.
And then as far as this grant request, are those dollars eligible for funding, or is it just the artistic portion of their grant that's eligible for funding?
We see it as part of the project overall. So they identify their use of funds, that it's going to be the professional musicians. But since this is part of the project and helps the project take place, it's allowable to be put in the budget.
Thank you. Laura, anything to add?
A couple of things. I guess I kind of question the artistic quality just because I really didn't see that they provided us with a lot of examples. And so I was a little concerned about that, because I'm not sure, I'm not sure how the artists interact with the community. I want to see that. I wasn't sure about how the 6 communities were selected. Were they selected because of they had a certain demographic, or they were certain low income or something like that? So I would like a little bit more information on why those 6 communities. In terms of planning, I mean, this has been going on a while. I think they've got it down in terms of planning. I think evaluation, though, and this is something Crystal mentioned too, is a little weak. And I know this sounds kind of crazy, but I would like to have some sort of feedback from the audience. I can't believe that there isn't a way to capture that in some way, so that you don't just have an audience, a captive audience that is basically experiencing this, but an audience that is engaged and is appreciating it. I didn't see any of that, and I also felt maybe it's just me that there was an awful lot that was in their newsletter that was self-promotional, that I was kind of confused as to why they submitted the newsletter with all of the pictures of themselves celebrating what they do. Again, but what about, there's got to be YouTube videos of the audience and the performances and the interactions and things like that, so that we really understand that this is a quality event for the seniors. So, and again, maybe I just didn't understand why that was there. And then in terms, I guess, of outreach, I mean, they really don't need to do much outreach, because I'm not sure that they can. But I'd like to hear more about how some of the homes or facilities were low socioeconomic, representative variety of races and military veterans and things like that. Again, that demographic piece. I think it's great that they get some feedback from the directors, but again, if only they could somehow capture the audience, that would, I think, really make the application pop.
Okay, thank you. Rod, anything to add?
No, I think Crystal and Laura covered it fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Drew, anything to add?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Just with the timeline, just because the grant specifically asks for it, one, and also I just feel like it instills more confidence when you do give the detail of who is accomplishing the tasks in the timeline. I always kind of ding that just because it is asked for blatantly within the grant, but also, yeah, obviously it doesn't mean anything to me, but if you show that you have that figured out, that just instills a little more confidence. I noticed that there's a lot of sponsors and sponsorship levels mentioned within the newsletter that they provided. But when you're looking at the budget, it's just not clear if are those all raised then at the annual fundraiser that's mentioned in the budget, or should that be itemized in corporate support and foundation support within the budget? It just wasn't clear, and anytime that something just gets merged together in the budget, I just start to have questions. And then I don't know if this is a technical question or what, but the thing that came up when looking at the budget was the funds raised at annual fundraiser. I question if that would be more appropriate under unearned income versus like applicant cash. But I'm not quite sure if the annual fundraiser is for a bigger thing or for this project in general. There's just a lot of lack of clarity in that. I don't know. And when it comes to budget questions and red flags, that's when I get a little wishy-washy about grant funding. And then I'll just say, not a huge fan of the copy paste email letters of recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion for this application? Okay, if not, give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on. Crystal, did I miss yours? You ready? Okay, sorry. All right, go ahead, Rachel.
Our next applicant is Mount Moriah Baptist Church, and they are proposing a 3-part summer series, with each part of the series being comprised of an instructional clinic in the morning and following in the evening of the same day with a performance. The clinicians will lead 3 workshops, or will lead the workshops in 3 areas. One is vocal performance, one is music ministry leadership in the Black church, and the third is audiovisual technology in the Black church.
All right, and we'll start with Rod.
Yeah, well, I was excited to see this application as someone who had a long career as a musician in the Black church. And I think the needs are there, but I think there's just kind of talking to the needs in the application to me were not as strong. So number one, the artistic quality, the work samples were just too short. The primary work sample was 35 seconds and the secondary one was 12 seconds. So, I mean, there's really no way in totality to see the artistic quality and merit. Certainly, when someone sings the first phrase, we as musicians, we kind of know, but it would be great to hear more, right? And to see more. The project description overall does not support all 3 aspects of the proposed summer series, because there's to be vocal performance, music ministry, and then the audio visual, but primarily the narrative and the grant really talks about the application only talks about vocal performance. So it does not really give a supportive case for the need of music ministry, which is part 2, and then the audio visual. So just so that was missing. Something that I thought was great was the morning clinics would be followed by evening musical performance, where the attendees could actually apply what they're learning. So that's just good pedagogy, So I thought that was really good. Just observation about the planning. All of this rests on 2 individuals. So just an observation. As far as the budget, there is awards for $1,500. I'm assuming that's awards given to like attendees, but based on something, but I don't know if it's for the attendees or for the clinicians. So just some explanation around what that is, and if there are awards to attendees, then language about what are the criteria for that would be helpful. Like, how are people being awarded and who's making those decisions? Just from a so we understand that. As well as the refreshments. Again, not sure if that's for attendees or for clinicians. It's $375, but still just clarification. Also within the budget, there was fees for band and vocalists. I'm just curious if who these individuals are. If it's the musicians who already work in the church, this is the extra service. Great, understand that. If it's other musicians being brought in for this, then just clarification. And let's see, outreach and engagement. Oh yes, so the letters of support, the first letter of support really described the benefits of music in general, but not like how this project will support and build upon those benefits, if that makes sense. And so then the second letter of support, similar, described kind of the value and impact and importance. Well, actually did not describe the value, impact, and importance of this project. So just a suggestion, when these letters of support are submitted, just make sure they are really writing to the project and not just kind of the benefits of music in general. But other than that, I think just a stronger case for all three parts of the project would be really helpful.
Thank you. Next is Crystal.
Yes, so I will say, as a musician, was also excited to see this come through. Think that it's an important need. However, I don't think that the grant, if we're looking at the grant itself and not the project, I don't think that the grant itself does a sufficient job explaining the project. There are, in addition to several key points, there are also just several formatting or grammatical things. There are just several overall, I think, issues with the way the grant was put together. So I think my comment there would be hopefully having additional people within their organization be able to review the grants before submission. But overall, the project description, I think that they do a good job displaying a zeal for the project and a passion for the project, but I don't know that we necessarily get all of the pieces we need to understand how this project is going to come to fruition. Artistic merit, I agree. I think longer work samples would have helped. I think that, certain people have a contextual knowledge and can understand things more quickly, but overall, as a grant application, I do think that longer work samples would have been helpful here. And also a little bit more explanation about, I know it mentions that Joe Taylor is will design the clinics and select the clinicians, but would like a little bit more understanding there as to, are these clinicians musicians actively working in the Black church? Are these music education professionals? Who are these people that are going to come in and lead these workshops? Because to Rod's point, I do think they show some good pedagogy with allowing the participants to use the skills right away. And I also think it adds to the overall experience because you go from learning to performing. And I think that that's also an important aspect, but would love to have just seen that. Would love to understand a little bit more how that's gonna work. As far as planning and evaluation and goals, I think, like we've mentioned before, a blanket statement is that when evaluating or when saying that you're going to evaluate, just having some really key metrics, what metrics are going to be used in that evaluation. And it also mentions that the satisfaction and effectiveness of instruction, it mentions satisfaction and effectiveness of instruction, but I'm not quite sure what that means or how they're going to actually evaluate that. When it comes to budget, I did have a question, particularly about the space rental. And Rachel, again, this might be something that you can help clarify. It sounds to me as if this is going to happen at the Mount Moriah Baptist Church facility itself. And so I don't know if that is because it's happening, if that portion covers, everything that goes into keeping a building open during those time, lights, things, all that good stuff. But maybe if we could clarify if that is an appropriate use of those funds, just based on how we view the budget and the grants there. Overall, for outreach, I think they do a good job really outlining the community demographics and, again, the need for this and what they hope to accomplish. Would love to see more specifics about the promotion. I think based on the rest of the application, I do think that their promotion plan is probably better outlined than some of the other areas, but again, would still like to see more details. And then I really liked the community partnerships aspect where they mentioned all of the community partners and kind of let us know that that's going to represent over 100 churches. And would love just a little bit more detail about what their role is going to be in this particular event. But that's my overall assessment.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, did you want to clarify on that budget question at all?
I will be completely honest. I don't know what the space rental is for. I have the same question because it's held. The only thing I can think of is that the Heritage Center is in the basement of the church, and so maybe there's a relationship between the Heritage Center and the church, but they're two different entities that run the spaces. Is the only thing I can think of, but I don't know that. So I think that is a great question, though, to go back to the applicant, because I am not sure what that is for.
So recommend further clarification on future applicants or applications. Okay, Laura, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I would like a little bit more understanding of what exactly they mean by music ministry. So the vocal is, we're talking about the vocal part was pretty well understood, but the audiovisual and specifically the music ministry, I really didn't get that at all. And then so just a fuller, more descriptive description. And then just another letter, the letters were really not appropriate, and it's just a shame because I think they could have had great letters, and they just were not up to snuff. One of them, of course, was asking for money from another organization. So.
Okay, thank you. Drew, anything to add?
The only thing that hasn't been stated already still in connection with the letters is one of the letters is from November 2021. So it's not even like a current recommendation. And I feel like even if projects are repeating, updated letters are important to show the longevity and the need, and also talk of past experiences with it. So I thought that was a missed step.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion for this application? Okay, give me a thumbs up when you're ready for the next one. Okay, Rachel.
Our next applicant is the Nebraska Trumpet Ensemble. And the Nebraska Trumpet Ensemble will present one in-person concert in Lincoln, one live-streamed trumpet recital, and one special live-streamed event featuring the premiere of a work for solo trumpet to bring awareness on gun violence.
Okay, Laura will start us off.
So I really felt that the whole aspect of bringing awareness to gun violence needed to be explained. I mean, we can imagine what that means, but I really don't think you should assume that we know what it means, and it should be more explicit as to what that piece is going to be, why they commissioned it, and, you know, is it an elegy? What is it? You know, so that in terms of the description, the project description, I think that is very weak and needed to be bolstered. Artistic merit, I thought it was great. Most of them are Nebraska trumpeters who are very qualified, very competent. And I think showing that they're from Nebraska is a positive thing, and that they're connected to other trumpeters throughout the United States. I mean, I thought that was all excellent. So yes, the artistic merit was high. Goals, I think to bring the not maybe some rarely heard professional trumpet ensembles and solo music to Lincoln it's a good goal. Provide music education in local schools, and that I want to come back to because I'm not quite sure how that all plays out. And that they intend to reach a fairly wide audience, 100 for in-person and 200 for live streamed. Assessment again is weak, except for counting heads. Is there a better way to gauge audience interest in this particular activity? The teachers do complete evaluations, but I want to see examples of the questions that are asked. I think some of the more successful assessment pieces are places where you actually lay out specifically what you're asking. And I would like to see that. I think it was probably a pretty good planning process. They've been doing this for a while, so I think they do know what they're up to. They're not asking for very much money in terms of budget. So I have to admit I'm weak on budget. And Drew can help with that. Audience development, I think is the application's a bit vague on that. They could provide detail on precise dates and arranged interaction with churches and schools. Again, this lack of specificity prevents the application from having the credibility that it deserves. You really can't assume that your reader knows everything about what's going on, and you've got to lay it out and tell them. So for example, saying we've contracted with the following schools and that sort of thing can be really helpful in raising your credibility. I was confused by this. So this seems to be for the fall of 2023, but they talk about performing educational outreach concerts at local elementary schools in the spring of 2024 and providing free tickets. But it's not for this concert series. It would have to be for a future one. So I didn't really understand that. Yeah, and then I think, again, they've missed an opportunity to provide an underserved outreach component, because they could have said that they're going to focus their educational outreach maybe on Title I schools or something like that. And instead, it's just whatever, we just don't really know. Yeah, I'm not sure sometimes whether the, this is kind of, I'm not sure if the outreach is educational or promotional. Are they really doing an educating, you know, in the schools, or are they promoting their concerts in the schools? Maybe they're doing both, but I don't know, that was a bit of a confusion for me. And I was very confused because one of the letters is from a senior center, and they never mentioned senior centers in the entire application. And suddenly we've got a senior center supporting it. So that I found a little weak. Why, if you're going to do all this educational outreach, why not have the Lincoln Public Schools write a letter of support? So overall, very supportive of this application, but really more care needs to be taken with the applications, and so that the reader really understands, for example, what the piece on gun violence is all about, and why this particular person was selected to, you know, to do it, and all of that. So that's my initial assessment.
Okay, thank you. Rod?
Yeah, echo a lot of what Laura has said. Certainly the explanation about the piece that's, you know, on gun violence, and even a step further, you know, will there be any type of pre or post concert talk? You know, will there be a call to action for, you know, for people that are there? Like, what can we do, right? Not just this music and we leave. So just, you know, and all of that may be what they're doing, but we don't know. So just, you know, kind of writing that out. With the planning, because of the kind of the amount of planning and tasks that are to be completed, it would be great to kind of see who are the responsible parties for that. Then I think the planning and evaluation is, you know, just a suggestion. If they are going to, they were talking about, you know, surveys, questionnaires, and all of this, and then on their Facebook Live page, they ask people to like and leave a comment. But just a suggestion, on Facebook Live, you can pose the questions in the comment section and pin the question, right? So people could just answer the questions that are already, you know, written, right? So that could just be a way to get consistent data from in-person and virtual. So just a suggestion. And then just lastly, I would like to have seen what changes and modifications have been made based on attendees' feedback, you know, so just kind of always kind of showing like, oh, this is what we've done as a result of last year's feedback or whatever, because I think that would be really, really helpful. But other than that, nothing more to add.
Okay, thank you. Drew, anything you'd like to add?
Possibly. I have a question for Rachel that then may lead to another question. Just for clarification, in looking at the budget, and this kind of came up before, but I feel like it's easier to kind of clarify some and may need to further clarification within the application itself. But looking at office space rental, or the second item space there of space and facilities, is there intention of space and facilities costs related to the program? And I ask that because office space to me almost feels more like an administrative cost, but I'm just not an office space is an administrative space of work versus like the programming space, and there isn't clarification on the application of what that's intended for, but I just wanted to get a little more clarity, which may lead to more questions.
I would say here's my perspective is that it's a little flexible. I understand why it's in space and facilities because it is a space. If I were writing the grant, I would probably put office under administration and put the concert space rental under space and facilities, because that's very specific to the project. It's fine where it is. I wouldn't go back to them and have them change it for it to be an eligible grant. So it's fine where it is. It could go in either space.
Okay, just being mindful of it, because if one would look at it as administrative, that brings administration close to that 25% cap. So just things to think about when it comes to the budget.
Thank you. And Crystal, anything to add?
No, nothing additional.
Okay. Any further discussion on this application? Okay, give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, thank you. Rachel.
So our next applicant is the Omaha Summer Arts Festival. And sorry, I had to scroll a little bit. This grant will help pay expenses related to the expansion of the Omaha Summer Arts Festival new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program, which will happen in June of 2024. This program will debut at the 23 festival this June with 6 new projects and 5 new collaborative partners. In 24, with additional funding, the Omaha Summer Arts Festival hopes to add up to 4 additional projects and at least 2 more partners as they work to enhance inclusivity. They estimate 80,000 people from throughout the region will attend the festival.
Okay, and we will start with Drew.
I feel like the quality and range of diversity that is focused in the program is very exciting. You know, to no fault of their own, it is just difficult as there's nothing to showcase, as the first year is yet to happen, and yet the request is for the following year. So that's just an acknowledgement. There's nothing to that. I do, though, because of that, greatly appreciate the many examples and explanation of potential instead of just saying potential as a blanket thing, to actually go into detail for both 2023 and 2024 to help us as the readers get even deeper perspective of it. So that is big points then to address that issue. And I do feel like the focus on local and diverse artists is very clear and heavily at the very roots of this project. So I appreciate that. Looking at planning and evaluation, I really like the goals that are set and the information provided on evaluation and tracking those goals. Little things like how stating this will be a yes and no question and the range of impressions of a 5-to-1 scale, like that just gives very clear and detailed information on the simplicity and approachable engagement they are trying to get participation from attendees. Very thoughtful timeline with lots of details. Especially want to highlight the expanded and routine communication with the artists that are involved. I just thought it was impressive. Their constant checking in and different times of providing space to make sure all that are involved have an opportunity to speak and be a part of the process. I'm curious about funding and fundraising efforts within the timeline, but it could be part of the broader, that those elements could be part of the broader festival, you know, while this is just a certain program of the festival. So I understand why that may not be included in there. Looking at the budget, I think there's opportunity for more breakdown within the administrative overhead. And I was missing sponsorship, grant application, and local funding that's in the timeline but not mentioned within the budget. If those funding resources are for this specific program, it would be nice to see those steps in management of the process within the timeline. Otherwise, I understand it might be a part of the bigger festival. Otherwise, it's pretty cut and dry, the expenses and income, knowing that they probably fit a lot of their marketing and some of these other things within the larger, this is just a portion of the budget for this project. And it makes sense to me that there's probably more included in their much bigger budget for the overall festival. Looking at outreach and engagement, I love how this program is a direct result of listening to the community's needs and interests. Good points for connecting and being responsive to your audience. I just think being able to have that narrative of we're doing this because of is great. I really appreciate how the promotion is both directed to those participating in the festival as well as those attending the festival, and having both perspectives and level of awareness of the inclusion in that is very recognized by me. Also appreciate the smaller activities set and in the timeline to make connections stronger and continue learning and making everyone comfortable. Nice to see the commitment to diversity, even in the promotional strategies to effectively reach diverse audiences. You know, we've kind of talked about that before, of how directly are you reaching those audiences? And I feel like they did a really model job of having that in here. Seems like this program of the festival just revolves around and showcases underserved arts communities, and happy to see that the event is free, to just, you know, get rid of even more boundaries to participate. The entire grant to me just shows commitment to community partnership with the artists and other organizations, and accessibility is good. I think there's an opportunity for additional outreach in the scope of working with particular areas in the community that would be greatly possible to connect with some of the represented activities in this program. I think it could help secure those connections and visibility in the efforts being put to the festival. Some things, like an example of that, when looking at outreach, you know, it's already happening, finding schools or organizations that may have focused on differently abled people, and then having them come be a part of a specific thing for the demonstrations of differently abled artists. You know, I think there's opportunities without having to create a whole new wheel for the outreach to really bring those together. But overall, very exciting.
Okay, thank you. Crystal, anything to add?
Yeah, just a few points, but overall, agree with Drew's points and think it was a strong application. I think one thing I would have liked to see in the goals or the project description, we eventually get to it when they're talking about the underserved community outreach, but would love to see a little higher up exactly how they're defining DEI in the scope of this program. I know it can vary, so would have loved to just see that a little bit higher up. I definitely think that they're keeping all of the categories they listed in mind, but yeah, would love for that to have just been a little bit more prominent. And that's honestly my only other note outside of what Drew said.
Okay, thank you. And Rod.
I promise I know how to use Zoom. I promise. Yeah, so I think one of my questions was that the title of this event, is this the right amendment? Yeah, okay. So I'm not sure if it's called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program, or if that's something just that's internal language. So just I'm really curious about that. But similar to what Crystal just said, some definitions of what they mean by these words would be helpful. I think later on we kind of get into the diversity and I guess in the inclusion part, but I'm not sure all about the equity aspect of all things. Let's see, project goals. I mean, just I think what has been said before, just, you know, being more measurable. So for example, how many diverse artists, you know, what amount of income, what is that amount, how many members of the community, how many art forms will be included, just something that's really measurable will be super, super helpful. And then I just, you know, lastly, just I see there's some partnerships that have been happening, but I'm just curious to know, you know, what are there any more efforts to connect with community members, community leaders, community stakeholders, you know, not just organizations, but the actual people in the communities, just what that looks like, and if they're a part of the planning as well. But that's it.
Thank you. And Laura, anything to add?
Not really. I just think it's really an exciting application.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion for this application? Okay, if not, if we take a break now, that'll give us 4 more to complete after the break. So go ahead and make any adjustments that you need to in your scoring system. And Rachel, what time you want us back?
Let's come back at 11:40.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Laura Marsh, do we have you back too?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, Sam, you can go ahead and take our screen down.
All right, Rachel, next applicant.
All right, the next applicant is Playing with Fire, and this grant will help pay for the performing artists and production costs involved for the 2023 Playing with Fire concerts held at Midtown Crossing and Turner Park on July 14th and 15th, and then on August 13th and 14th. They estimate 4,000 to 6,000 people from inside and outside the Omaha area will attend each free concert.
Okay, and Rod will get us started.
Yeah, well, this is exciting yet massive. But yeah, it was exciting to read. But there's a lot, but it's good. Artistic quality, the inclusion and featuring the local and regional artists. I think it really helps to connect the project with the community because many people are coming from kind of all around the world. But that's great. The planning and evaluation was very detailed and really extensive. And even the planning, what I noted, included just assessment meetings, which I thought was really great as well. It would be, an added benefit to see who's responsible kind of for all the things, but that's just, an added benefit. But it was very detailed and I appreciated that. Providing examples on how the organization has utilized feedback was also helpful. And so, to see how they have modified, changed things, was really helpful. One of the quotes within the outreach and engagement said, "Our concerts provide enhanced quality of life, contributing to the wellness of those who attend." I, in my notes, wrote how, right? So how is that being done? Wonderful statement. If that's happening, that's great, but just it will be helpful for us to see how that's being done. Just, something to note is they gave a quote about research findings. I think it was something about, how research has demonstrated how music supports our mental, physical, emotional health. Just with statements like that, especially if it's saying it's a research finding, some type of citation would be very helpful. That's probably my researcher bias showing, so sorry, but that would be really helpful. The promotion was very extensive, but which leads me to the budget. The advertising dollars seemed like a lot. It was over 11,000, and based on the promotional efforts, it was primarily social media. So, and then there was some radio, advertisement and stuff. But again, I don't know if that's it just seems expensive, but I don't know. Maybe that's what it costs. Okay. There was something else in the budget that talked about other venue requirements. So some explanation around that would be helpful because that was over $15,000 in just other venue requirements. So if I missed, the clarification or explanation around that, my apologies. Question about attorney fees. I'm assuming that is looking over all these contracts, but so maybe some clarification around the attorney fees would be helpful. But it said visa and attorney fees, so I'm assuming that's connected to just contractual things. I'm not sure about accounting and tax preparation. Maybe I'm missing something. If someone else can kind of add what that's about, that would be helpful. But there was over $9,000 in accounting and tax preparation. I just didn't understand that. But other than that, I mean, it's massive, and it seems like it can have a very large impact.
Okay, thank you. Laura.
Yeah, I certainly agree with Rod. I mean, this is a huge undertaking, and I think a huge impact on the community. And I did love the fact that they have some of the blues ed students playing along, not playing along with the concerts, but at least performing in 2 of the concerts. I thought that was an important way to tie in one of their major sponsors with this event. Yeah, I did have a few questions about the budget too. I was overwhelmed by $118,000 or so in donations. That seems amazing. And then I guess really strong letters of support, really liked those. I agree with Rod that the statement about music supporting our physical, mental, and emotional health it's kind of I mean, I guess it's kind of like a pat statement, but what does that really mean? And unless you can really define it, maybe you should think about not saying it. Yeah, I thought it was really strong. The Blues Society of Omaha also as a partner provides a lot of volunteers for setup, production and cleanup. That would be huge. Given 4,000 to 6,000 people per event, so that's an amazing contribution. But yeah, I was very excited about this, and the artistic quality of the performances were amazing. So,
Thank you, Drew. Anything to add?
Yeah, I can speak some to Rod's question about accounting and tax prep on the budget. I actually give extra points for that a lot of times in smaller nonprofits or nonprofits that focus on one event. It's more of a red flag if they're doing their own accounting because there isn't good checks and balances. And for when you have a budget as high as what this is, seeing a portion of that going to someone else doing the due diligence of those checks and balances is actually like a very good thing. So I don't know if that helps explain why that's in there, but it's actually a very, very good thing that they have it in there, in my opinion. But yeah, nothing really much to add that's already been said, except just to point again, there is over $100,000 of individual donations, which is almost 70% of their total income. And so more explanation of how that happens would be comforting.
Okay, thank you. And Crystal, anything to add?
I'd just like to second the piece about the accounting as well. I think that's because they are focusing on one event. I think that's a really key aspect there. So I was happy to see that as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion for this application? Okay, if not, give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, Rachel.
Our next applicant is River City Mixed Chorus, and this grant will help cover production expenses for the River City Mixed Chorus's Winter 2023 concert, which will be held at the Holland Performing Arts Center on December 9th, 2023. They estimate 1,200 people will attend the performance.
Okay, and Crystal will get us started.
Yeah, so we'll start off by saying that I overall think the grant was pretty well executed. Starting off with the project description. Oh, hold on, sorry, my mouse is scrolling. Starting off with the project description, I thought they did a good job kind of giving an understanding of basically like just an overall scope of the organization, what they're hoping to accomplish, the event itself. Artistic merit, I thought that they gave a good written explanation, but then also I think their work samples were good representations. And I especially liked that the YouTube video was from this past December. For the project and planning, I made a note and I'm just pulling it up. I had not questions, but maybe would have liked to see a few more tasks outlined. Not a lot, but just a few more, so I could really understand how the whole project will be coming together. I don't think that it wasn't a big flag for me, but something that I did want. I thought their budget was pretty well outlined in terms of breaking things down, like the contractual fees and things of that nature. I didn't have a ton of questions there. Let's see. I did have a question about, they mentioned 10% of 2022 concert ticket sales, so would have liked to see that outlined a little bit more. That was one of the metrics they were using. And so would have liked to know what that number was. And then community outreach and engagement. I thought that they did a good job with kind of explaining the partnerships, but maybe would have liked for them to go even just a little bit more in detail there as to what each of those partners will be doing exactly. And that maybe goes back up to the timeline. But overall, thought it was a strong application.
Thank you. And Drew, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the acknowledgement of, the 40th celebration says something, as well as I like how they gave the standings of kind of what they do and where they kind of rank in the nation was kind of a cool thing as well. I really do enjoy their planning document, but I agree of how that could be maybe broken down then a little bit with more detail, but overall it's a good planning document. This is a grant proposal budget of my dreams. I love how broken down everything is. And one thing that I wish I could expand to all people is the utilization of the narrative boxes within the budget and how helpful that is. Seeing that used is just great and helps explain so much. So I wish that could be a very highlighted thing for all applicants to utilize, as it helps us review. But otherwise, just the robust community partnerships as well as visibility in the community, I thought was impressive.
Thank you. Rod, do you have anything to add?
Just, can everyone hear me? Okay, all right, so I switched. Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that everyone has said. The only thing I was kind of missing is trying to place myself as an audience member. It didn't really read very communal. It is very kind of heavy artistic performance based, which is fine. But I just would have liked to see how, what really impact you're trying to have on the audience, because it was like, hey, we're going to work on diction and intonation, which is all great, high artistic performance, but how would I fit into that as a person attending the concert, if that makes sense. But that's the only thing. Everything else was wonderful.
Thank you. And Laura.
Yeah, I have really nothing to add. I'm excited to support this project.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion for this applicant? If not, give me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on. Okay, thank you. Rachel.
Our next applicant is the Valley Performing Arts Center or Valley Performing Arts Theater. And this grant will support the Glenn Miller Orchestra, artist fees, and related activities that will be held at the Golden Husk Theater and area schools on October 6th through the 8th of 2023. They estimate 265 people will attend the concert, which is on October 8th. As well as the engagement of elementary through high school students from up to 4 area schools and homeschool families during the educational activities and movie event.
Okay, and we will start with Laura.
I thought this was a really well done and application and very thorough. I really liked the engagement of the elementary through high school students in the schools and teaching them about who Glenn Miller was, obviously probably touching upon World War II and all of that. I thought that that was exciting. What better way to bring basically an older or a group that might appeal more to older people into the area than by teaching younger people about it and the importance of Glenn Miller and the fact that, frankly, that the Glenn Miller Orchestra still exists, even though Glenn Miller's been gone for quite a while. So I was very excited about that. And again, connecting the students with performance so that a concert band of 40 students would also join the orchestra. This whole concept of teaching about the music, the importance of the music spoke to me. I'm a music historian, so it would. I think it's a high, obviously artistic quality, high. It's a very polished orchestra. And as I said, this adding in of the students engages the community in an important way. Goals and evaluation. They had a lot of excellent goals laid all out to inspire youth to pursue their passions might be a little lofty, but it was very touching. Again, to try to make that connection. So they were really working on communicating with music teachers and students and tracking patron tickets and sales and pulling in from other communities in the area. Again, this is Ord, Nebraska. So it is an underserved community geographically and everything. So I think they're trying to do a lot with this concert. They've already designed their questions for evaluation. The director of the Golden Husk Theater has been around since 2015, so they are excited to bring these new and interesting performances to the Loup Valley region. I think it's very well planned and well communicated in the application, this planning process. The budget is well planned and thorough. Audience development. Ord is a town of about 2,300 people. So they have to reach out to the communities in order to gain that, the audience numbers that they want. Many of them are elderly and many are also low income, so that they're going to try to attract multi-generational audiences. Yeah, so and they've in order to address the low income, they have reduced price tickets for seniors and complimentary tickets. But the tickets themselves, $20, it's very reasonable. Yeah, outreach, marketing plans seem very comprehensive, a lot of multimedia strategies, press releases, social media, posts on the Glenn Miller Orchestra website, flyers and promotions, personal invitations. I mean, they were really doing, I think, due diligence in terms of marketing. Flyers are sent home with all the students. Their outreach is within a 90-mile area. And they're also reaching out to the Ord Chamber of Commerce and Nebraska Tourism. So again, it's pretty, I think, pretty thorough. The letter of support are good from the local area Chamber of Commerce. I wasn't quite sure about one of the letters being from the president of the Loop River Scenic Byway, but it was still, they were very supportive and strong letters. So yeah, I thought this was an excellent and well put together proposal.
Thank you. Rod, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, the secondary work sample, the press kit was very informative and it was laid out very nicely. So I really appreciated that. The planning and evaluation, the goals were well written, but they're not, all of them were not really measurable, right? So for example, you know, the goal 2 would be more quantitative, like how many comprehensive resources will be identified and cultivated, right? Goal 3, how will inspiration and empowerment be measured? So some of those things just to ensure that you're meeting the goals and you're able to kind of, yeah, to measure it. The broad partnerships, as Laurie mentioned, that was great. And then the letters of support also kind of echoed the sense of pride the ensemble has, as well as like how it brings local residents together. One thing that I really appreciated was how they talked about tourists and how that really strengthens the local business economy, right? So, I mean, it was just really great that they, you know, that the person writing the letter was making that connection, which I think is an important connection.
Sorry. Crystal, anything you'd like to add?
No, I would just echo Rod and Laura both on their points.
Thank you. And Drew, anything to add?
Just positive. I always like when there's multi-generational goals and outlook of events. So seeing that is always good, and good points for that. Only budget thing, and I don't know if how much of it is criticism to the grant or maybe just like helpful thinking out loud, but with such there's just a high relying on ticket sales as far as their portion of income in relation to like the large amount from NAC that they're requesting. I think especially with projects like this that are so community related, I think there's opportunities for corporate support and more foundation support for events like this. And I would encourage broadening those revenue streams in these kinds of projects.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion for this application? If not, give me a thumbs up and we'll move on to our final one. Okay, Rachel.
All right, our last applicant today is Wayne State College. And this grant is for a performance by the Canadian Brass at Wayne State College on September 8th, 2023. This performance is part of the Black and Gold series, which has been an integral component of cultural offerings in Northeast Nebraska for a number of years. The grant funds will ensure high quality artistry with maximum accessibility for the audiences.
Thank you. And Crystal will start us off.
Yeah, so looking at artistic quality, I felt like I wanted more information about the specific event itself. There's quite a bit of background on the Black and Gold series, kind of what they're hoping to accomplish with the performing arts in general. There's a lot of background on the community, the Wayne community, but would have liked just more specifics about the actual event. I think as we hop over to like planning and evaluation, oh, actually I'll back up. I would say as well, a note that I had to was again, would have liked to see more information on the actual event, but particularly in the work samples. And then for planning and evaluation, I think that they had really specific project goals outlined, but similar to other comments that have been made, would have enjoyed seeing more details on the execution to achieve those goals, and then also the evaluation. So track ticket sales and audience attendance at each performance. Success will be measured quantitatively through ticket sales and qualitatively through audience engagement. And the ticket sales is a definitive number, but you know, what does audience engagement mean? For the planning and process doc, would have liked much more detail on how they're actually going to make this come to life. As far as the budget is concerned, I feel like it was pretty straightforward. The only thing I would say is I wonder if there are some other expenses that maybe just aren't listed here. It was pretty straightforward, but that being said, it's very possible that a lot of those expenses related to artists were absorbed into the contractual fees. So I would highlight that. I thought the letters of support were good. Overall, I think for what they needed to accomplish, I think that they did that. The only other thing that I had was for programming impact. I think because it's a higher ed institution, there maybe was some things that got lost in translation, but would have liked to understand a little bit more about the need that they implied for this program. That's my general overview.
Thank you. Rod, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just a couple things. Crystal did a great job with this. I think Crystal mentioned just the audience engagement that, again, just to echo, that kind of lacked specificity, like what does audience engagement look like? Also, are there opportunities for the audience to engage as well? There was a quote in the outreach and engagement, but studies show that attending a live performance can reduce stress and improve mental health. Just a citation would be very, very helpful. So we understand that, so we understand the totality of that comment and to ensure it's not taken out of context, right? The promotion piece, in the project goals, it talked about expanding the audience from, I think, 250 to 400 spectators, which is actually a really interesting word. And that they used it, I think, a couple times in the grant. So I'm curious typically you don't hear spectator in the arts. So I'm just really curious about that term because it seems intentional because it was used more than once. But in the promotion, there was no information about how they're going to expand the audience. The promotion piece was mainly about the audience that they currently have, right? So, because I think it started by saying we have defined our audience, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't support, or there's no language around how do we get this new audience from a promotional standpoint. But other than that, I mean, that was my kind of only few things to add.
Okay, thank you. And Drew, anything to add?
Just a few budget things to think about. I just thought it was kind of interesting for a $14,000 contracted event that they're just budgeting 75 tickets sold. Something about that's weird to me, but also at the same time, there might be things like, students don't buy tickets and there's other things that are involved, but there's no narrative explaining that. So it just, the storyline and the budget is strange. Also, with that large of a performance coming in, they do mention that there are postcards about the whole series, but then only spending $125 for radio announcements also doesn't add. That might be why you're only getting 75 tickets. I don't know. The budget is telling a different story than what I'm imagining from the other narratives. So these are details I would encourage them to maybe look at a little more.
Thank you. And Laura, anything to add?
Just that I had not looked at the budget very carefully, and I just did, and I saw the 75 tickets and I was like, what? So yeah, I echo Drew's concern, or at least confusion, as to why they're only selling 75. But other than that, nothing to add.
Thank you. Any further discussion for this final applicant? Yes, Crystal.
Just one point. They do in the outreach and engagement specify that we routinely send electronic communication to appropriate public school instructors inviting attendance at the performance or the workshop free of charge. This will typically bring 25 to 50 students. So there is some there are some free performances going on there, or free tickets. That might also lend to why they say spectators, if they're, saying that people are not paying. And also, I imagine with a college campus setting, there are people who probably do spectate, walk by, don't. I don't know, right? I'm kind of just thinking kind of why using that language. And so with those considerations, it understands where there might be some discrepancies between the anticipated audience based on the ticket sales. But I do think that that would be something worth outlining very clearly, so that it's well understood.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, give you a moment to finalize any scores and give me a thumbs up when you're all finished. Okay, thank you. Now that all applications have been discussed and scored, we will take a 5-minute break. And during that time, the NAC staff will tally the scores and prepare information for our final discussion. When the panelists reconvene, we'll review the procedures and make final determinations. The final portion of the meeting will be closed to the public, so we will end the live stream now. But before we do, I'll remind all applicants that you will be notified in June about the funding decisions for this grant category. So to all of those tuning in and watching today, thank you for joining us, and goodbye. Okay.